Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wealth Conversation podcast with me, Tsitsi Mutiti. I guide high-achieving women on their journey to build lasting wealth so they can prepare for an abundant future in every area of their life. I hope that today's episode will help you to transform your relationship with money so you can make the choices that will enable you to create the opportunities and lasting wealth that you desire. Let's get straight into this week's episode. If you have been listening to this podcast since it launched, then you will know that giving is one of my dominant habits. You will also know that overgiving is partly the reason why I found myself in financial difficulty. So when I met Emma Gosling, I knew I had to have a conversation with her. Emma is a clinical hypnotherapist and mindset mentor who helps high-achieving and overgiving female founders and executives to stop shortchanging themselves and have more time, fun, and money without the guilt. In this episode, Emma will be sharing what overgiving is, why we tend to overgive, and how to identify if you are an overgiver. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the Wealth Conversation podcast.
Hi, Tsitsi. Thanks so much for having me here. It's an honor.
I'm excited to have you here. I can't wait to get into this discussion and to share it with whoever's going to be listening to this episode. But before we get into the meat of the discussion, please share a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I am a clinical hypnotherapist and a mindset expert, and I have a background I have a degree in psychology with sociology, and my background is in education and teaching, as well as training in mindset work and therapy work. I'm a wife. I'm also a mum, so I think that gives me a bit of expert status in the overgiving realm.
Indeed.
As with many mums, and my passion is helping women to kind of peel away the layers of childhood, cultural or societal conditioning, or even traumas that create their many limiting beliefs about what their worth is and what they feel they deserve, and guilt or shame around having success and wealth. So I know we have some common threads with the work that we do, so I'm super excited to share with you today.
Fantastic, Emma. The piece on overgiving resonates so much with me because I don't know, I say I used to be, but I think it creeps in now and again in different ways, the overgiving. So can you just explain a bit about what overgiving actually is?
Yeah, so if we look at perhaps giving and how that can be sort of labeled or dressed up to us, giving is generosity, it's altruism, sometimes it's protective, sometimes it being motherly and taking care of people, it's kindness, and it can make us feel comforted, it can make us feel validated. We can feel very useful and worthy when we give to others. But then, when does that kind of tip into overgiving? When does it start to actually harm us, either emotionally or financially, and it can even have an impact on our financial future, even on the well-being and health of ourselves and our family. And for me, giving from a place of generosity starts when you've actually filled your own cup, you've actually met your own needs, and you've taken care of yourself first, which it sounds like very idealistic. It's not always possible, especially in a situation we find ourselves in and when we're parents. But actually meeting your own needs first, and then you have the energy and the enthusiasm and the kind of you coming from a place where you're already kind of fit to help others. Whereas overgiving for me is the inability to receive, and it's an inability to meet your own needs first. And often it can mean that you're giving, and either you're hoping it's going to be appreciated, or it makes you feel good, So there's kind of an unconscious need to feel worthy or good enough by being that overgiver. And sometimes women feel obligated, morally obligated to overgive if it's expected by family members, etc. So yeah, I think looking at what healthy giving is first can kind of predict or shine a light on the parts of us that are overgiving.
Yeah, I love that. It's something I had to learn over time that, it is so much better for yourself to give from a cup that's overflowing than one that's half full or half empty, whichever way you want to look at it. Because the strain, it can be so much. And I love the fact that you focus on not just your financial health, but your physical health as well, because it does have an impact. When I was going through overgiving, it really did impact me mentally and emotionally, and I just felt very heavy, like there was a weight I was carrying but couldn't really explain it. And I guess that's when I realized that maybe there was something wrong with this level of giving. But I'm hoping that by maybe people listening to this, to what you have to say, and by working with you, that they don't have to get to that point, right, where it's now having this impact on them physically and emotionally.
And some people are already there. They're already the behaviors or the effects of this overgiving. Women, I work with a lot of women who are business owners, entrepreneurs, and they're either undercharging or they're giving away lots of their time for free. And then sometimes they have to work even harder to either they're working hard because they want to prove their worth or prove what they're charging or they're earning, or it's because they are giving away a lot of their disposable income, so they need to work even harder to bring more in, to keep the expectation going. And it can lead to feelings of guilt and shame around spending money on themselves, taking care of themselves. So a lot of the times many women are already in those behaviors without realizing that it's coming from the kind of overgiving. The inability to receive and say no as well is really, really massive.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring in that point about charging and your time, because I didn't realize that this giving, because I thought giving was all about the money, right? You're giving money away for whatever reason. But when I set up the wealth conversation, I didn't recognize that my overgiving now started filtering into how I was charging, the amount of time I was spending with clients. And it does have an impact on your time, on your finances, and on your health. So it's a really important point. What are the main reasons or triggers for overgiving? I know you touched on them briefly when you answered the first question, but I was wondering if you could delve a bit deeper into maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, so I think if you're a parent, there's a natural tendency to to overgive. I also think there are lots of cultural conditioning from us. So in particular, girls learning how to be liked by others rather than being more vocal about their wants and their needs. It's more about keeping the peace, not making a fuss, being a good girl. And that sort of expectation that we feel from our parents and even other significant adults, teachers, for example, it can put a lot of pressure on young girls to try and continue to be the good girl. And so we're hardwired to avoid rejection. And so if you see that your behavior is unacceptable in your parents' eyes, then there could be a threat of rejection. So that's from a tribal sort of, going back to cave people's times, we needed that acceptance. We needed to avoid rejection because that's how we survive. And so because our most of our habits and behaviors now as adults, 95% of them are being driven by our subconscious programs. The key sort of time when we're learning about relating to other people and putting other people's needs first and being that good girl and trying to avoid the conflict and fitting in. That's more or less fixed by the time we're 7 years old. So between 0 and 7 is when most of our subconscious is wiring for the first time. And those kind of programs are running our behaviors as adults. So even as an adult saying no, you might think logically, yes, well, I need to do this. I need to say no here. But unconsciously, those needs to avoid rejection are still kind of really strong and will stop us through fear of shame, through fear of being judged by others. And so it kind of keeps us in that loop of or a cycle of overgiving. Was that clear? Hopefully.
Yeah, no, very clear, very clear. I was just taking that all in because and thinking to myself, it's amazing that as human beings, we've progressed so much. If you think of us as animals, we've progressed so much, but that subconscious behavior comes from, caveman days, the basics of being part of a tribe and wanting to be part of a tribe. That being liked is about, if you move away from the tribe, you are more likely to die in the wild. And it's so interesting. I find it so fascinating that it's impacting us today. And it's gone through the generations for millennia. This has been the one thing that has stayed constant. And yet, as human beings, we find it very difficult to deal with it and recognize it. And as you were talking, I was just remembering all the kind of books I used to read and the cartoons I used to watch. And it was all about being liked, really, as a girl, Yeah. And it's feeding into the decisions we make with our time as adults, with our money as adults, and the relationships that we go into.
Yeah. And what you said there about the tribe mentality, our family is kind of like our tribe as well. So
yeah,
when I work with women who are very successful, they're very high achieving, but they kind of play down their success, they play down their wealth, or they try and get rid of it because if they've been brought up in a family that wasn't wealthy or successful, then it's almost like you're betraying your roots. And I've had clients who have said, my parents always remind me, remember where you come from, don't get too big for your boots, or just remember, be humble, be modest. And that sort of idea that wealthy and successful people are arrogant or rude or unlikable. And so no wonder we don't want to be shouting from the rooftops and kind of saying, look at how well I've done. We're not very good at praising ourselves and recognizing our achievements, and that's one of the reasons we don't want that. Again, it comes back to the rejection. We don't want that rejection from our families and our peers and our friends, for example.
Wow, Emma, you've just you've described me, my life. It's I remember when I won my first award, it was like the most exciting and most embarrassing thing for me. And when people were coming and saying, oh, congratulations, I was like, oh yeah, and I do that with everything. And I've been, saying to why, it's difficult to celebrate success for me. And it is this thing of, not wanting to be set apart from the rest of the tribe, because a lot of people used to say to me as my career was progressing, oh, you're going to forget us, and it's that thing about being a part of, you're rising up, you're going to forget us, and so don't forget where you come from. That's where it's coming from, really, isn't it? And I didn't have the language or the knowledge to be able to say the reason why I'm working so hard and wanting to rise up as they see it. I'm just thinking I'm putting one foot in front of the other here, but they're seeing as me rising up is, I want to be able to bring you up with me. But some of those conversations can be so difficult, especially when you yourself are going through, the struggle of trying to break through barriers, leveling up is difficult because you're asking yourself questions like, do I deserve to be here? Is this the right thing for me to do? And then your tribe is saying, oh, if you go there, you're going to forget us and you're going to leave us here. And it's so much conflict. So I can see why our brain is then triggered to be like, you know what, it's better to just stay down here. It's less stress.
Yeah, it happens to so many women that I come across. It's happened to me too. And so, we have to keep working on that and believing in our worth and what we deserve.
Yeah, no, it is. It's so important. And I think focusing also on how other people are going to benefit from it is one way that I've started learning to deal with everything really. If I make this decision, if I want to earn a specific amount of money, or if I want to charge a specific amount, who is going to benefit and how are they going to benefit from it? And it kind of makes it easy as opposed to just focusing on how I'm going to benefit from that.
Yeah, there was an article I read recently in Forbes magazine, and they were talking about how the more money that we can get in the hands of women, the more we can change the world, because women are more likely to invest directly in their families and their communities. And so it's the end goal is that, yeah, as you said, everyone is lifted up. We bring everyone else up with us.
Indeed.
So keep focusing on that. It's not selfish.
Yeah, definitely not selfish, and it's not greedy as well. I think that's another thing that we try and shy away from, seeming greedy. And that should really, I think that impacts us when we're charging as well. Like, when you're thinking about charging, you think, oh, this is too much and people might perceive me as being greedy. But you're actually charging for your worth and for the impact and transformation that you're going to provide. Would you mind sharing with us when overgiving impacted your financial and emotional health?
Ooh, where to begin?
I've got time, or I can turn this into 2 episodes. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, always, once a people pleaser, always a people pleaser. I mean, that's kind of pre-therapeutic work for myself, but I grew up wanting to please people, and I found it very hard to say no. And as a child, I discovered later on in life, and when I trained in what I do now, I learned that sometimes my young brain found ways of saying no by being sick. So I developed a tic, and that was a sort of excuse to, not go on school trips or whatever, because or I was actually physically ill. And I think a lot of that was my body trying to protect myself from bullies at school, for example. And then growing up into, as a young adult, that also finding it very hard to say no and have boundaries, and it's exhausting. Then I'd feel resentful, then I'd lie awake at night, and these conversations of what I really wanted to say to people would be going round and round in my mind, and I'd be getting more and more mad with myself. And then perhaps from a financial overgiving, when I've been in a couple of relationships where I was the main earner, that there was a tendency, I realized later on, that I was trying to buy love, being the generous person. Embarrassingly, I remember buying flight tickets for a boyfriend to come and see me, and he didn't even ask for them. He didn't even want to. So I bought these flight tickets. Oh, no. And they just went unused. Yeah. So that sort of feeling that that I need, that it also made me useful and indispensable by being the financial, or being the financial bearer of gifts, I suppose. So many times. Also undercharging, that was a big thing for me at the beginning of my business. Undercharging and overgiving of time, definitely, and not having boundaries around time. I remember when I first trained, I ended up working with a woman in San Francisco, and it was 8 o'clock my time in the evening, and we didn't finish till 10:30 p.m. And I mean, that's that's a long gone now. I work in school hours between 9:30 and 3, and that's it, because just can't sustain that. It's not healthy.
No, it's not. Yeah, I learned that the hard way as well. When I started my coaching business, I would offer 45-minute discovery calls, and they could go on for an hour and a half. And although I felt good about the conversation because the person had, I mean, I was basically coaching the person in the end for free. And I felt good about being able to get them to the next level, at least open their mind to what is possible. But at the end of it, I'd be so tired. I'd be really, really tired. And then I'd probably have another one in maybe half an hour. And then what would happen is I wouldn't be able to do anything for myself. All I wanted to do was just sit still, not do anything. And then suddenly it's 8:30 in the evening, and there's all these things I need to do around the house. So, that thing about really giving to yourself first and giving from a cup that's overflowing is really important. And when I realized that and learned about that concept, it made me look at, a simple thing like how much time am I spending on these discovery calls, and how is it impacting me in the long term, and then the people around me in my family, etc. It's really important. And thank you for sharing that, because the overgiving doesn't only impact us in terms of money. It's, as you say, it impacts our emotional health and then every area of our life. Emma, how do you support your clients to manage their overgiving?
So it kind of begins with a little sort of audit of their, what they believe about themselves. What are the thoughts that keep coming up? What are the actions or the habits that they've become aware of that are sabotaging their happiness, their wealth, or their health? And then looking at a sort of deeper dive into the subconscious programs that were formed when they were children, because that awareness of where something is coming from can be very, very powerful, because then you have an opportunity to reframe why did that child interpret that rich people are bad? Why did the child interpret that, and then that's how they're living their lives as an adult, feeling guilty for having more than others? Because then it gives you an opportunity to make a different choice, and also look at it from the point of the fear of not being the same as everyone else as a child, and the fear of rejection is not actually applicable now as an adult, because we can survive without our tribe in the society that we live now. We are massively independent. We're not scared of leaving the tribe and going to have a look around a forest and scared about what's out there in the society we live in now. We're much safer than we were then. And then also them having tools to help them rewire their subconscious programming. So actually updating or upgrading their neural circuitry so that they're running on new beliefs about themselves, that they do deserve financial freedom, that they do deserve to treat themselves and put themselves first, that they can be their own best friend and their own priority. Those are the three main things.
And so for someone who's listening right now, who's not sure if they would need help or support in terms of overgiving, what would you say are the signs that they should look out for when they're trying to figure out whether they are overgiving or whether they need some support in that area?
I would look at, firstly, how do you feel about receiving? So if you're the sort of person who is always there as a shoulder to cry on for your friends, you're always there kind of helping out people financially, rescuing people financially, you're giving a lot of time and not charging for it, how would it feel if you then received that? So if you were receiving the financial help, or you were able to ask for help, emotional help, share your problems with other people, if it makes you feel uncomfortable or you avoid doing it, then that's a really big sign that you are overgiving and you are struggling to receive and take care of your own needs. If you have beliefs that you're perhaps bad with money, that you're not good at managing money or saving money or spending it on yourself, and I've worked with quite a few women who have come to me with that, oh yeah, I'm just bad with money. But actually, it's not about the money, it's their self-worth. And they didn't realize that the fact that they're spending on others and not saving for their financial future was about them not taking care of themselves and feeling worthy and deserving of it. It was more, they thought they just had habits, bad habits. They needed help with that. And it was a much deeper thing. And then how do you feel about giving to yourself? Do you know when to take a break and rest? Do you go, this is one thing that I struggled with, if something's physically wrong, are you there going to book an appointment with your GP, or are you putting it off for months? I've been there many times, and it's a sort of, oh, well, other people are more important, or other people have got more serious problems. And so you sort of neglect your own health and well-being. And this is probably something that you work a lot with people. Have you got a financial plan, and are you saving for your future, or are you just using all your disposable income to make other people's lives comfortable, but not your own? And so looking at those things, I would say, is a good place to start.
Wow, Emma, again, you hit a nerve with me, because that thing about going to the GP, both my parents were doctors, so I've always had this thing about going to the GP. But actually, it's with the giving and over giving, I am that person who, if I feel there's something wrong with my body, I really won't do much about it. I will just wait and kind of, I don't know what I'm waiting for. That's the thing, right? And as you were talking, I'm realizing that, oh, actually, that is part of that whole giving thing, that maybe I'm thinking it's not that bad, and I will sit in pain and keep going to work, keep doing the stuff around the house. Not realizing that that's all part of this over giving.
Yeah, it can be a kind of very martyr-like way of behaving, that no, I will be fine. Make sure the kids are fed and dressed and everyone else is okay first. And sometimes people can get to the point where they really do need help before they will go and seek it. And so we want to try and nip that in the bud. Make sure if we are healthy, we can actually give more to people in a better way.
Yeah.
I think it's about giving in a healthy way rather than over giving. And we can only do that if we take care of ourselves first. And if you're a businesswoman, your health is your biggest asset. You can't have a business if you don't have your health.
That is so true. That is so true. There is so much in there, Emma, and I'm sitting here thinking we should do an episode on just how giving can impact your health. I know a lot of people in certain communities that have had to stop working because they were just giving too much, in terms of having to overwork because they needed to give either to people back home or people, in their community. They felt that obligation, and it did not end well for a lot of people. So thank you so much for highlighting that point, because we always think it's about money, and actually it's not about the money, is it? Yeah. Emma, that takes me to the fact that I believe that wealth is so much more than just money, and it encompasses every area of our life. So in a few words, please could you tell us what wealth means to you in terms of physical, mental, spiritual, social, and financial well-being?
Sure. I love that. I love that wealth is not just about money. So that's a brilliant question. Thank you. Well, in physical wealth for me is, yes, my health is my asset, and it's honoring my well-being, and making sure that I'm resting, making sure that I'm eating well, etc. In terms of mental wealth, I would say, again, knowing when to rest, knowing when to say no. We can't avoid stress and anxiety. They're natural parts of our lives. And so having good coping skills to get you through those periods or of more difficult periods, I think, is important. Spiritual wealth for me is about when things get tough is to keep bringing myself back to what my purpose is, what meaning my work has. For me, it's about growing as well as a person and always working on myself so that I can be the best that I can for the people that I'm helping. Social wealth for me is about community and connection. And we have so many connections now with social media. And I'm really big on maintaining and kind of really putting more energy into the closer relationships that I've had for a long time, old school friends, people who I can turn to, because when there are so many shiny objects and people to connect with, those relationships can get neglected, and I think that's really important. And then finally, financial wealth is having all my needs covered, physical needs, physiological needs, all those other needs that I mentioned, and then having choice and freedom. So how many hours do I want to work? Where do I want to spend my money? And how can I give back? So in a nutshell, that's it.
That's fantastic. I love those. I love your definitions. Emma, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest. And I know we've just literally touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to overgiving and the impact it has on our lives. How can listeners get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
They can go to my website, which is www.feelgoodenough.co.uk. And there I've got a free download if anyone's interested, 3 ways to stop overgiving so you can have more time and money for you. You can book a call with me to find out more about me and if I can help you. And I also have, you can also book a mindset upgrade, which is basically about uncovering the main reason why you overgive and then having a little mini subconscious upgrade to give you more clarity moving forward. And protecting your time and boundaries.
Brilliant. The link to your website will be in the show notes, and I think I've got the link for the download as well. So all of that will be in the show notes, which will make it easier for people to get in touch with you. I just want to thank you so much for being an amazing guest and for doing the work that you are doing to support women to have more time, fun, and money without the guilt.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've loved chatting to you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Connect with me at the Wealth Conversation on Facebook and Instagram so we can continue the discussion. Also, if you're ready to define what wealth truly means to you, then go to thewealthconversation.com and download the Wealth Cornerstones guide. Until next week, stay focused on becoming the designer of your financial future.